you from the Spit Studios in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. This is the Spit Sports Show. We've almost made it, guys. We are 9 days away from the kickoff of the 2025 NFL season. And after a couple months from that, we get the NHL season and the NBA season. It really feels like summer is coming to an end, which is obviously a very sad thing. Summer's awesome. But that's the beautiful thing about football, isn't it? It makes the end of summer seem almost like a blessing instead of a curse. It really is one of the best weeks of the year, week one, because you still have hope of your team being 0-0, and any given Sunday, anything can happen. But before we get into all of those games and week by week dissecting what's going on in the league, I want to put down my flag in the overall NFL rankings and how I think each division will shape out, who I think is going to make the playoffs, and who eventually I think is going to end up in the Super Bowl this season. And we're going to go division by division, team by team. I'm going to be somewhat quick through every team because obviously there's 32 of them to get through, and I don't want to sit here for 2 hours going through every single roster and offensive lineman, although realistically I probably could, but it wouldn't make for that enjoyable of a video for you guys. So I'm going to start in the NFC North with the number 4 team in that division, in my opinion, the Minnesota Vikings. Look, they might be the single best last place team that I picked in the entire NFL. I love their roster. Obviously, Justin Jefferson's awesome. Jordan Addison, although he's going to be out for somewhat the early portion of the year, should be back. I think they have 2 pretty good running backs. I think Jordan Mason was a really good pickup. I like their pass rush. I don't like their secondary. But the reason why I have to put them last is because I have major question marks about their quarterback. And although all the reports out of camp so far have been positive, and apparently he's seeing the field better every day, he was not the driving force of his own college team. And his college team, they being, always seemed to play better when he did less. And although that's not the be all end all, and he did end up winning a national championship, obviously, I have questions about his ability to transfer his ball distribution to some of the best players in the country to the NFL, especially when he had his entire rookie season taken away from him due to a knee injury. I don't know what that's going to do for his confidence. I have major questions about the most important part of their team, so that's why I have them in last. Third place, the Chicago Bears. Now, listen, I think this team could be good, but it depends on 2 things, in my opinion. It depends on, number 1, their offensive tackle play, which is going to be an issue definitely on the left side and maybe on the right side. It has been a competition throughout camp between 3 different guys, a veteran, a rookie, and a guy that they just signed on that left side. Whoever doesn't win that left side spot is probably going to get shifted to the backup of the right side. I think their interior is solid, but in today's passing NFL, and especially in Ben Johnson's offense, I think their tackle play is going to be vital, and I don't think it's going to be very good. The other concern that I have for the Bears is they have a lot of tough games really, really early. And I worry that that is going to throw off the vibe of the team, especially when in training camp, it seems like Ben Johnson's been a bit on edge with their lack of attention to detail. And obviously, just having a new coordinator for a young quarterback is a gigantic leap unto itself. Early in the season, playing those tough teams, I feel like the Bears might shrink early in the season, which will lead to later season controversy and potential finger pointing and bad body language from Caleb. But they could be very good. I have them in third place because there obviously is a lot of talent there, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So, second place, I have Green Bay. And they're basically bringing back the same team that they had last year, adding Matthew Golden, who I think could be a very good wide receiver for them. But outside of really Xavier McKinney and whatever you think of Jordan Love, this team is a lot of really good, not great. I feel that way about pretty much all of their units. Losing Jair Alexander obviously doesn't help. I know they didn't really have him last year either, but it's definitely not a positive thing. I think their running back, Josh Jacobs, is going to be a little bit worse this year with another year of carries on his body. He's getting older. I think the Packers are going to be really good, not great, hence why I have them second in the division. And again, I will reveal if they made the playoffs at the end after I've gone through all of these teams. The top of the NFC North is the Lions. They still have the best roster, maybe in the entire NFC. They're bringing back all of their offensive core pieces, and their defense, I think, is going to be a top 3 unit this year. I think they might have the best secondary in the entire NFL. Aiden Hutchinson is going to be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. Their offensive line depth scares me a little bit, but outside of that, there really are no holes in this roster. I understand that they have new coordinators, but they both have experience with the team before, so there is some form of coherency there. I think the Lions are going to win the division, not comfortably, but with a decent amount of force. Moving on, staying in the NFC, going to the NFC South at the bottom of that division is obviously the New Orleans Saints. They might be the worst team in the entire NFL. Spencer Rattler, to me, is flatly a bad quarterback. I just heard a podcast where a receiver that used to play with him talked about how he can't not throw 100%. He'll run like a 5-yard slant and still whip it in as hard as he can. That shows me that he really doesn't have any touch with the football. Overall, this roster sucks. I don't see them winning any more than like 4 games. Third place in the division, the Panthers. Now, I actually think the Panthers are going to be frisky this year. I think they could steal some wins that we don't expect them to have. I think they're going to be a team that I bet on a lot throughout the year because I think their lines are going to be quite low. I believe in Bryce Young. I think he's a solid, accurate passer. I think he's going to turn out to be around the 16th best quarterback in the NFL when it's all said and done. And McMillan is an exciting addition to the offense. I hope he can add a little bit of explosion alongside of Xavier Legette, but their roster is still bad, flatly. They spent a lot of resources on their defense, which I respect, and they're getting Derek Brown back, who's an awesome D lineman. But still, just overall, this roster is not talented enough to compete with the top 2 teams in this division. Now, who do I have winning the division? The Bucks have done it for the last 4 years in a row, but they don't do it for a 5th. They show up in 2nd place in the division. I think the Bucks are going to be really, really good on offense. I think Emeka Ibuka is going to be really, really good as a rookie. Baker has talked about him all offseason, how he's had a phenomenal camp. Mike Evans is Mike Evans. Although he's older, I don't see him having any less than 1,000 yards. Godwin's coming back as a wide receiver 3 potentially, which is a cool spot for him to be in. I like their tight end, Cade Otton. Obviously, Tristan Wirfs is one of the best tackles in football. But I think because their head coach is Todd Bowles, who's obviously a defensive-minded coach, I think their defense is perceived as better than it actually is. They are incredibly shallow at pass rush and corner, and I think Todd Bowles' elaborate schemes can only do so much to protect that, which means first place in the NFC South, I have the Atlanta Falcons. Now, obviously, a lot of this has to do with how Michael Penix turns out. I think he's going to be really good. They basically went all defense in the draft with 2 of the best picks, best value picks I saw in the entire draft, Jalen Walker and James Pierce. I think their pass rush is going to be so much better with the addition of those 2. Again, I think Penix is going to be great. Bijan Robinson, my goodness, is one of the 3 best running backs in the NFL. If this isn't the year Kyle Pitts can do something, then he never will. I think the interior of their offensive line is solid as they come, and I think Drake London's great. I think there's a lot to look forward to for the Atlanta Falcons this year, and I also believe a lot in their head coach. I think they end up winning this division and throwing the Bucks off of their crown. NFC East, I said I was going to go fast. I've been going slow. I apologize. Giants finished last in this division, but they tie for last with the Cowboys. I think their pass rush could alone win them 6 games. I think with obviously Abdul Carter coming in with Dexter Lawrence and the rest of the crew, they have a legitimate scary front 7, but their offensive talent outside of Malik Neighbors is just so destitute that I don't see them having enough explosiveness to consistently generate points. If Jackson Dart comes in and lights the world on fire, anything's possible, but the Giants, I have around 6, 7 wins. The Cowboys, I think, are going to be bad this year, especially with the drama of Micah Parsons surrounding this team. If he doesn't play for that defense, they could legit be a bottom 3 defense in the entire NFL. Overshown won't be coming back till later in the season. Their cornerbacks are jumpy and beatable, although they get a lot of picks, they get burned a lot. I think Dak Prescott is a good, not great quarterback who is surrounded by good, not great weapons outside of CeeDee Lamb, obviously. I think Pickens is one of the most overrated receivers in the league. And Javonte Williams has been my fantasy darling for, I think, 3 of the last 4 years, and he's done nothing with it. I don't believe in him as a bell cow running back. Jaden Blue as their backup is kind of interesting as an explosive piece, but overall, this roster just isn't very good. I see them as the last place team in this division or third, depending on who beats who, matchup dependent. Second, I have the Commanders. Now, I have them winning a lot less games than they did maybe not a lot. I have them winning 10. I have offensive line questions about this team, especially on the interior. It's kind of been a revolving door throughout the entirety of training camp. But on top of that, what people might not realize is although their schedule on paper is not the hardest, in terms of travel, it's pretty difficult. They have a couple of West Coast trips. They have to go to Madrid. I'm still very, very concerned about their secondary, which was an issue last year. I think their pass rush is going to be a lot better, but in terms of the back end, I don't know how well they're going to be able to cover. Overall, Jaden Daniels is amazing, and I'm glad they got McLaurin re-signed, but this roster to me isn't quite good enough to compete with the Philadelphia Eagles yet, who I obviously have in first in the division. The only thing that you can really say about this Eagles roster at this point is they had a bunch of defensive losses with older veterans. And what I would say to that is the older veterans weren't what was holding the fort down for them last year. It was the new guys that they brought in, Jalen Carter, who I know they wasn't a rookie, but younger player, Cooper DeJean, who's awesome, and Quinion Mitchell, who might be the best cornerback in football in a couple of seasons. Well, if Pat Surtain quits football, I guess. But the point is, he's awesome. Eagles offense is unstoppable in short yardage, with the tush push still there, which is just a unspeakably huge advantage when the margins of the NFL are so thin. AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are coming back. Saquon Barkley seems motivated to follow up that season that he had last year. I don't see why the Eagles don't win the division quite comfortably. Moving on to the NFC West, last division in the NFC. At the bottom, I have the Seattle Seahawks. Now, I actually think the Seahawks could, again, be frisky this season, kind of like the Panthers, but they are a massive question mark in so many departments. They replaced their offensive coordinator. They obviously switched out their quarterback. They replaced their starting tight end, and they replaced 2 of their top 3 receivers. I think their defense is going to be pretty solid. I question their pass rush a little bit, but defense will be really good. Offense is a huge question mark. Considering the other teams in this division and their reputations around the league and what I think they're going to do this season, them falling in last is not necessarily an indictment, but I think Seattle's going to have another pretty mediocre season. Third place in the NFC West is the San Francisco 49ers. This feels like a retool year for them, in my opinion. A lot of it depends on the health of Christian McCaffrey, which at best is shaky. I don't think their defense is going to be nearly as good with the losses of Ufunga and multiple other linebackers, Dre Greenlaw, who they lost. I think their coaching is going to be improved on defense, obviously, with Robert Saleh coming back, but their personnel is weak. Their receiving core is the weakest I've seen it maybe since the Shanahan era, for sure. Ricky Pearsall is going to be their number 1 receiver, it looks like, with Jennings dealing with injuries and the loss of Deebo Samuel and Ayuk still hurt. This feels like a season where they see what they have in Brock Purdy when he does not have ideal circumstances around him from the beginning of the season and see how he plays with them. I think this is a third place team this year in their division, which means second place, I have the Arizona Cardinals, who admittedly, I seem to believe in more than anyone else every single season, but to me, this is definitely the year. Upgraded their pass rush big time, which, in my opinion, was their biggest issue last year. Josh Sweat is an awesome football player, and Calais Campbell's a rock solid defensive tackle. I think they drafted the steal of the draft with Will Johnson in the second round. Apparently, he's been just putting work on Marvin Harrison Jr. in training camp. I think Kyler, although I don't necessarily believe in him as a long-term franchise piece, is a good enough quarterback to distribute the ball to guys like Trey McBride and Marvin Harrison Jr. James Conner is a great power running back, one of the most underrated running backs in the league. I think they come in second. And that means I have the Rams at number one with the caveat, is Stafford healthy? I don't know. I think he is. I think there was some kind of under the table deal with his latest contract where, not his latest contract, but he was thinking about retirement after last season. I think he made a deal with the Rams where you can kind of drift through training camp as long as you're ready for week one. We're good to go. We're going to go for a Super Bowl. Is he healthy? I don't know. But if he is, this roster's awesome. Jared Verse is a great pass rusher. Their entire defense has really reshaped quickly in the last couple of years. Puka Nacua is a stud of studs, and I think Devontae Adams has a lot of gas left in the tank. Their offensive line is pretty solid. I like pretty much everything about this Rams team. They come in first in the NFC West. Holy, I need to take a deep breath. Okay, NFC done. I really think that the Rams could win the whole Super Bowl. That's another take. I'm not actually picking them to win the Super Bowl, but the more that I think about it, like their secondary is definitely gettable, and their tackles aren't great. Outside of that, their roster, wow. Anyways, AFC. Starting with the best division for the last like 10 years in the NFL, the AFC North. At the bottom, I have the Cleveland Browns. I don't really need to say much about it. Them or the Saints are competing for the first overall pick in my mind. Third place, the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, obviously, signing Trey Hendrickson's big. They also had Trey Hendrickson last year on defense. He had the season of his life. Yet and still, they had a bottom three unit in the NFL, which cost them so many games. And I don't see how it gets much better this season unless that rookie that they drafted, Shamir Stewart, pops big time. It's on the board, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't bet my bottom dollar on it whatsoever. I think the Bengals come in third, which means I do have the Pittsburgh Steelers coming in second in this division. This isn't so much a tribute to the Steelers as it is an indictment on the Bengals. The Steelers just don't have losing seasons. And although I don't think Aaron Rodgers is good at football anymore, I think he's better at football than Kenny Pickett, Duck Hodges, Mason Rudolph, and a bunch of other quarterbacks that Mike Tomlin has pulled to 9 wins. I think the Steelers end right around 9 wins, and the Ravens win the division because they're obviously the best team in that division. I wish I had better analysis for you guys, but you know it. I know it. Everyone knows it. They have the best roster, the best quarterback, the best coach, and maybe not the best coach, him or Tomlin. I'd take Harbaugh. Anyways, the Ravens are obviously winning that division. AFC South. This is an interesting division. It really is. A lot of frisky question mark teams, not including the Colts, who are going to be terrible. I am not a Daniel Jones fan. I think he's a bad quarterback. I believe in their coach, but players play games and their defense is going to be bad again. Their secondary is terrible. Besides Quentin Nelson, their offensive line is a whole bunch of question marks. Really not much to like about this team. There is something, however, to like about the third place Titans. I think Cam Ward could have a underrated rookie of the year season. I think Calvin Ridley is due for a bounce back year. He's too talented not to. Tajay Spears is an underrated running back. And I like Jeffrey Simmons, obviously, on that defense. But I don't like a whole lot else about their defense, and their weapons are extremely shallow. So I have them in third place. Jacksonville in second. I think that this team could win 11 games if their schedule was a little bit different, but the first half of their schedule is just so tough. And it's already a tricky enough adjustment for a guy who's on his fifth offensive coordinator to learn that system. I think it's going to be too hard of an adjustment. I think they're going to get off to a slow start. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they heat up late, but I don't think it's going to be quite enough to win that division because the Texans are going to win that division. I love their head coach. I think their quarterback is due for a bounce back season. I think last season, actually, Stroud played really well considering the circumstances around him. Diggs going down early in the season, Tank Dell going out middle of the season, Nico Collins having constant hamstring issues, and maybe the worst offensive line in football. I think CJ Stroud is still a stud, and people need to recognize it. He's due for a bounce back season. Texans win that division. AFC East, the Dolphins at the bottom. I don't believe in anything that the Dolphins are doing right now. I definitely don't believe in their head coach. I do believe that their receiver doesn't want to be there. Their best player, Tyreek Hill, doesn't want to be there. I do believe that without Tua being healthy for 17 games, they are dead in the water because it seems like no one else can run McDaniels' scheme. And I don't trust Tua to play 17 games. I think they're bad in both trench plays on the offensive and defensive lines. And I think they finished last because although they have the talent, they do not have the culture. The Jets finish slightly above them, maybe with the same record, but I think they're going to be a bit better vibes wise for sure. I believe in Aaron Glenn. I believe in him as a culture setter. I just don't believe that the Jets have a good enough roster to really pop this season. And I definitely don't believe that their quarterback is good enough to consistently put up points with the weapons that he has around him. Outside of Garrett Wilson, there really aren't many pass catching options. They have two good running backs, which is solid, but their offensive line is below average. Jets come in third. Patriots in second. I think Drake May is interesting. That's all I'm going to say about that. I think he's got Herbert-esque talent. I think that Vrabel coming in is as big of a coaching upgrade as you can imagine from one season to the next, which is obviously going to be a huge boost, especially early in the season. I think they did a good job drafting, especially on defense this year. I think the Patriots are going to be good and frisky. The Bills are going to win the division, again, like the Ravens, because they're obviously the best team. Not much to say there. AFC West. This was the hardest division for me to pick. This was the one where I went back and forth and then back and forth again and then did it again. And I finally ended up with putting the Chargers last. Now, if Rashawn Slater didn't get hurt, I think I'd probably have them third. That's a huge injury, especially with how much the Chargers want to run the ball, especially with their wide zone scheme. That is just a potentially AFC conference changing injury. I think Herbert is due for another good but not great year. I like the addition of Trey Harris on offense. I think he'll bring a bit of explosiveness, which the Chargers obviously need. Lad McConkey's awesome, but I still have questions about their overall offense and their ability to consistently produce big plays and points. And overall, like, I think the Chargers are going to be a good team, but this division, I think, is going to be a really, really good division. Chargers coming last. Third place, the Broncos. Not much to not like about the Broncos this year, I got to be honest. Their defense is obviously going to be amazing. Sean Payton's overrated head coach, but still a good head coach. Bo Nix in year 2, you would expect him to take another step forward in the complicated system that he runs. And I like Cortland Sutton and RJ Harvey, who they just drafted as a running back. I think there's a lot to like about the Broncos. And I think they win the same amount of games as the Raiders, who, when I talk about coaching upgrades for New England, there isn't a bigger coaching upgrade than getting Pete Carroll in that building after Antonio Pierce. I think Geno Smith is a top 13 to 16 quarterback in the league, which is obviously a huge upgrade from Aiden O'Connell, who can barely make a roster now. I think the Raiders with Ashton Genty is going to be an explosive running game. I think obviously they have a pass rush set up with Crosby. Their secondary is horrendous, which is why I can't have them any higher than in that 2-3 range in this division. But I think they could definitely sneak into the playoffs. Raiders at number 2 or 3. I have them and the Broncos winning 10 games each. And the Chiefs win the division because they're the Chiefs and they're the best team. Wow. Is that it? NFC North, AFC South, AFC East, AFC West. Whew. Deep breaths. That is every single team in the NFL accounted for. That's exciting. That went by faster than I thought it would. I'm sorry if it just seemed like I was kind of rambling there. I didn't really have a choice. Is what it is. Playoff teams. This is where it gets interesting. As the 1 seed in the NFC, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. As the other playoff teams, I have the Detroit Lions, the Chicago Bears, and the Green Bay Packers, which means I have 3 teams from the NFC North making the playoffs as they did last year. The other 3 I have in the playoffs are the Rams, the Falcons, and the Cardinals. Now, I do not have the Commanders making the playoffs this year. Now, that's going to be a controversial pick. 2 things, again, really, really scare me. 1, this team is so much like the Houston Texans from last year. Rookie quarterback has one of the best seasons we've ever seen. They go into next season with lofty expectations. They're healthy for his rookie season. They win a playoff game. Everything looks up. And then eventually the reality of the NFL sets in where you have to deal with real adversity. And not that Washington didn't last year, but they won so many 1-score games and had so many last-minute heroics. They literally won on a Hail Mary. They won on 2 field goals at the buzzer. I think this is the year that they take a bit of a step back like the Texans did last season. The Bucks I don't have making the playoffs because, again, I think the Falcons are going to win that division, and I have questions about their defense. And the 49ers, again, honorable mention, but overall, I just don't think their roster is that good. AFC, I have the Chiefs as the number 1 seed. Chalk pick, I know, but I think the Chiefs are going to be awesome again. I have the Bills and the Ravens also making the playoffs. The Texans, as I mentioned, as division winners. And then as my other 3 playoff teams, the Raiders sneak in. The New York Jets sneak in to the playoffs. And the Denver Broncos also go to the playoffs. Hold on. Do I have that correct? I just want to make sure that I didn't write this down incorrectly because that would be awkward. I have the New York Jets in the playoffs, yes. I think the Jets this season could be the team that takes a lot of people by surprise. And people will always look at my playoff predictions and say, how could you say this, blah, blah, blah. Not understanding the fact that there are always 3 new playoff teams every single year. At least sometimes there's 2, but that's exceedingly rare. Honorable mentions for making the playoffs, I have the Chargers, the Steelers, and the Jaguars. And as far as my Super Bowl pick, I'm going with the Lions against the Bills. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, I want to know, who do you guys think is going to the Super Bowl this year? What is your big sleeper NFL prediction? I want to know all about it in the comments below. Please let me know what you think. Please leave something in the comments below. I just said that. What else was I going to say? I've done this intro 10,000 times, and yet I've forgotten it. Please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed what you heard. Please subscribe if you really enjoyed it. The Spit Sports Show just hit over 400 subscribers. Big things happening on this channel. And as always, I will see you all in the next one. Peace out. Love you guys.